It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLabPGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLabPGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at fitlabpgh. Already a fan of FitLabPGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. The great thing about podcasts is the ready availability of information. In the case of FitLab Pittsburgh and our sister podcast Moving to Live, almost every week of the year we release a new episode for each of the podcasts. That has the positive effect of giving you new information and interesting guests with almost every interview. It has the bad effect that if you miss a week, get a busy week at work, or don't get a chance to listen to our podcasts, sometimes you miss out on some great information. This week, we're going back in the archives and re-releasing our podcast from December 17th, 2017, where we interviewed Menachem Brodie of Human Vortex Training in Tel Aviv, Israel. You may wonder why FitLabPGH, a podcast about movement in the Pittsburgh area, is interviewing Menachem. But Menachem grew up in Squirrel Hill, earned his degree at the University of Pittsburgh, and started coaching as a cyclist, endurance coach, basketball coach, and strength coach in the Pittsburgh area before he emigrated to Israel. He's got some great ideas on how to stay active in the winter and what to look for movement adventures during the winter. Give a listen to Menachem's information from 2017 that's still pertinent a little over a year later. FitLabPGH is back with another podcast. This is our second podcast we've done via Skype, and we've done it with the same individual. I'm really happy to have another opportunity to chat with Menachem Brodie, who is a Pittsburgh native, although right now he's living in Tel Aviv, Israel. We interviewed Menachem about his business, Human Vortex Training, and it's our October 8th, 2017 issue. So if you have not listened to that yet, you do want to listen to it. Not only is he a Pittsburgher and an owner of an endurance coaching business, but he's a really neat guy who really meets the ethos of FitLabPGH. Movement is part of what makes your life complete. And it seems every time I talk to Menachem, we've talked 3 or 4 times, we end up talking for about 2 hours before we actually record the podcast. So he's a really neat guy. I wanted to bring Menachem back as we get close to the Thanksgiving and Christmas season. Weather's a little colder in Pittsburgh. We've had some snow flurries, and I know a lot of people are not like me with dogs who say, well, if it's above minus 20, I'm going outside with the dogs. They kind of go inside. And as a coach of endurance athletes, I think Menachem is well suited for giving us some ideas and tips if you're an endurance athlete wannabe, or somebody who just wants to understand what you should be getting out of your indoor classes, whether they're spinning, high-intensity classes, aerobics. I think Menachem can give us some great information. So Menachem, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join FitLab Pittsburgh for a second time.
Pleasure. Really excited to be here, Ben.
And I know we were chatting a little bit before we started recording, and just kind of for people, if they haven't listened to the first podcast with you, which aired October 8th of 2017. What is Human Vortex Training? Kind of describe the athletes that you work with. And for those of you who are Pittsburghers and are going, well, why are you interviewing this guy if it's FitLab Pittsburgh? He is a Pittsburgh native, but also his business is over the internet in addition to face-to-face. So he has athletes all over the world and including Pittsburgh. So he is well suited for FitLabPGH.
Well, Ben, exactly what you said. Human Vortex Training offers athletes from around the world the ability to learn how to train smarter, not harder. And as we spoke before the interview, training is optimal if the highest sport result is achieved with the least expense of energy and training. And that doesn't mean, we're getting by, but that's kind of been my mantra, is teaching people from around the world, especially endurance athletes who think miles upon miles upon miles are going to get them there, when really if we focus down and get you the least amount of training to ensure you're going to hit your goal and go a little bit more than that in training, so we know you're going to hit your goal, but not so much where you're going to the marathon and you're a zombie and you're sore. It's getting to that start line fresh and fit, and form is fitness plus freshness. So really, Human Vortex Training is about endurance athletes and strength training athletes. And really, my believe it or not, my biggest client base is individuals who are working professionals with between 1 and 2 kids, ages 7 to 14, and the clients themselves are 35 to 54. That's my biggest group. So a lot of people look at my website and say, "Oh, he's only for racers," and really, most of the people I'm working with are average Pittsburghers. They have a family. They want to stay healthy. They want to be able to go with the kids outside and throw a baseball around or go cross-country skiing. And they're looking to train smarter instead of these people out there telling them, "Oh, no, you need to run 4 miles on the weekend both days." So it's finding that balance of your life and what's important to you, like family and work, but making sure that health and fitness is a core stabilizer so that you're able to do the things you want to do and perform when you need to perform.
And I know we're getting towards winter here in Pittsburgh. And as a Pittsburgher, you know that as fall progresses, the amount of daylight decreases. So whereas maybe in the spring and summer, you could get outside and take advantage of the rails to trails or some of the city parks, not everybody wants to invest in the price of headlamps and going outside after dark. So indoor fitness classes become much more prevalent. And some people just like the community aspect. So maybe during the year when it's warmer out and when it's lighter, they meet a group of people for a run or for a bike ride or for an outdoor boot camp style class. In the winter, they may have to go inside, and not all of us are hardcore cyclists who like to go down in our basement, blare the heavy metal music and ride our trainers. We want the sense of community with fitness classes that bring. And maybe you could talk a little bit about 2 different types of individuals that you work with. Number 1 being the person who's more performance-based, and number 2, the person that you described as the majority of your clients who are more, they have some performance goals, but they really just want to be healthy and be able to move well, and what they should be looking for as far as a fitness type class given a restricted time period, and the fact that their goal is not to take the fitness class and work as hard as possible, but to maintain what their overall fitness goals are, which are to be able to move around with their kids and be happy and healthy.
Excellent question. Let's start first, and you mentioned the daylight getting much shorter. One of the small things that seems to have the biggest impact for those in the Northern Hemisphere, I have a couple athletes in England and one in Sweden. Sorry, they moved. And one of the things that had the biggest impact on them for their ability to move in the winter, and really Norway, we're talking about really dark days, long days that are dark, was, I can't remember what it's called, Happy Light. Essentially, it has a specific light bulb which activates the, you know what I'm talking about?
There's 2 things I can think of. I know that there's blue lights or sun boxes that they sit in front. And then I know I used to really struggle. I'm a 5:15, 5:30 in the morning person who likes to get up then. And when it would get dark, it would get much more difficult. And about 3 years ago, I bought a light that's on a timer, and I think it's a special bulb where it simulates the sunrise. So my sunrise every year, no matter what, is 5:15 to 5:30 in the morning year round. So I think you're either referring to a light box or a blue light, or for lack of a better term, a sunrise machine.
I think it's the sunlight desk lamp, natural full spectrum sunlight, something like that.
And they
However, what you meant.
And they sit in front of it for 15 or 20 minutes a day.
Exactly. And that ties into one of the other things that can really help boost you as a person and professional that isn't movement related, at least not straight off the bat. And that is taking 15 minutes a day to sit and read something that's educational and learning about something that you're passionate about. You want to learn about photography? Close the computer, pick up a book or a magazine, or maybe it's a blog, but sitting in front of that light for 15 minutes, not only do you start to feel better and activate the hormones in your body to feel better and want to move, but you're also activating your brain, which will help keep the mental side of things alive with the, now they call it neuroplasticity, I believe is the key phrase, the hot phrase. But this is the first thing. We want to start with the small wins. And this is really important. The athletes that I have that have seasonal affective disorder or have been told by their physicians that they have been diagnosed with this makes a big difference. These people are naturally active, highly active in the spring, the summer, the fall. But as soon as we turn that clock back, they really feel the difference. It's a really change in their mentality that their significant others, their kids, and even their friends notice. So this is something small that's not necessarily movement related that can really tie your life together and have a big impact. And as you mentioned, Ben, having that stability of the sunrise with the sunrise lamps can really help a lot. But taking that and going into the movement side of things, there's really a lot we can do that tie together both the performance athletes and the working professionals who want to stay healthy and active. We can start with simple things. One is family time. I always say that family time is one of the most important things. If you have younger kids, believe it or not, as a 40-something-year-old, getting up and down, or older, getting up and down off the floor in and of itself is a hard exercise. And this can tell us a lot about how fit you actually are. Do you get off the ground like a grandmother in their 70s, or do you get off the ground like someone in their 20s? Meaning you take a lunge position and you push yourself and pop right up, or do you have to go step by step, little? So this is something you can make a game with your kids where you're just sitting around in front of a fireplace or a fake fireplace or playing with them in the living room, and you can just make it a game. Let's see who can get up off the floor, laying on your back, laying on your stomach 5 times. Who's going to be the fastest one? So now you're taking activity into your daily life. And for endurance athletes, believe it or not, this is a fantastic way to get workout in while having fun with your kids. If we're going to go more go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say that's some great information, and I could add for endurance athletes as somebody who is coming back from a low back injury that I suffered about 8 weeks ago. One of the things I've realized as I've gone through my rehabilitation is I move very, very well forwards and backwards and side to side, but any sort of cutting or rotational activities, I was shocked as I began my rehab how weak I was. And intuitively as a professional, I realized that it's a specificity thing. But if you're a triathlete or a runner or somebody who just does things in a straight ahead plane, I think Menachem's comments about different ways of getting off the floor, you're essentially doing a form of cross training or an adaptation of your muscles without officially setting aside time to do it. You're playing and getting a benefit from it.
And that's what you just said is you hit the nail on the head. It's specific adaptation to impose demand. And we tend to do things that we only like to do. And we don't see those blind spots. And it's a problem because when someone else points them out, either we get defensive or we say, yeah, you're right, I'll do it later. And as we all know, just like you're going through your inbox, you're like, oh, this is I have the great blog. I'm going to flag it and I'm going to read it later. Later rarely, if ever, comes. So even worse with the performance and movement side. But in the fall and the winter, one of the best things we can do is start to really explore everything around us. So right now, with the first few flurries coming down, we have fall harvest festivals, which are a lot of fun. You can actually walk out into the fields. There is one, Trax Farm, just outside of Pittsburgh, has a fantastic fall or had a fantastic fall harvest festival. And there's a number of others. I believe, I want to say Ligonier or Westmoreland. I can't remember which one, but they make it a real community event where you go out and you're going across the farm. You can go pumpkin picking. You ride on the back of the tractor with the hail base. I mean, it is an experience, and it's really something that's active and fun that as an adult you can do. I went with a previous girlfriend of mine, an ex-girlfriend, and my family when I was young. You can do all these different things, which really allows you to connect and see what else is there outside of Pittsburgh. And this is really important because Pittsburgh is a unique blend of country and city. I like to joke now that I'm outside. I like to look back and joke. We're the small city that thinks we're big, but really we're country. Toby Keith comes and we have tens of thousands of people down at Three River Stadium, more than a Steeler game. But this is a way to. The goal is, what I'm trying to get at is, you can explore the city around you. It doesn't have to be structured. Live your life, as you said before, Ben. You're out for your trail run and you see a log and you say, "Oh, let's go and just walk across it. See how I can do, like I'm a kid." And you were surprised as to how bad you were at it. Enjoy life. We're not stopping to smell the roses. We're going out with our Fitbits and our Vs and all these different things. We have to get our run on this pace. One of the best things you can do, especially for the performance athletes, when you go out, explore. So yes, you have to do 5 kilometers, but who says in Squirrel Hill that you have to run past the nature center and keep going and just get your time, run to Edgewood, Swissvale, and come back? Stop at the nature center. If they're having an event, explore it for 5-10 minutes, keep running, and then come back at the end and explore a little bit more and do your cool down on the way home. Tie in your performance goals and movement to things that are outside of your normal. Move Fitness, you did one with John, which was fantastic. Look at their setup that they had at the street fair. That was phenomenal. These are movement things that should be easy to us as human beings, but they're challenging. This is the time of year to go out and explore that. The fall, right now, finally, after 9 years of pushing, and as well as Harvey Newton since the 1970s, strength training for cycling is finally starting to become mainstream. Runners are next. I'm coming after you guys. This is where exploring different ways to challenge the body, like cross-country skiing. Ligonier is an hour and a half away. Take advantage of that. When it's snowing in the mountains, the cross-country skiing they have out there is fantastic. And it is hard. Like, you try and do cross-country skiing. There's a guy here in Tel Aviv who has the rollerblade version. You try it. It's really tough. I had my nutrition professor at Pitt, Dr. Amy Otto, I believe her name was, did cross-country skiing, and she was in killer shape. I believe at that time she was in her late 40s. It is a very full-body workout, unlike anything else. The coordination, if you're looking for something fun, instead of jumping on the trainer or going and running on the treadmill, learn how to cross-country ski. The other thing is Pilates. Fat bike is fantastic. You can go out when it's snowing. We also have TRX, hiking. Hiking is fantastic. The long distance triathletes I actually write in their training plan, November, December, January, sometimes in February, if it's not too bad, go for a 3.5 hour hike. Make sure you're prepared. Here's your checklist of things you need to take with you, including an emergency phone or some type of transmitter, letting people know where you're going, what time you're expected to be back. That way, if they don't hear from you in a certain time period, someone can come look for you. Because we need to be prepared to be out. But the trail hiking, that's something I believe Jesse Kropelnicki has been doing for a couple years with his professionals as well during the base period. So it's non-regular strength training, but it's teaching you go out and connect with nature and have fun. And that's really what this time of year should be about. Yes, you need to stay in shape, but let's find creative, fun ways to go out and explore everything that Pittsburgh has and connect in ways that you wouldn't normally do because it's not specific to your sport.
And staying with the theme of athletes who have competitive goals, and I would imagine from the clients that you described that your training programs, the peak hours of the week, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this would be the peak training times, are probably not much more than 12 to 14 hours a week. Is that correct?
I have honestly right now very few athletes at that. I have 3 high-end cyclists that are category 2 or higher. One of them is semi-professional. She did her second year in Europe, so she's at 16. Most athletes this time of year, we're down at 8, believe it or not. When it gets cold, we cut back.
So that brings a good thing that people who are maybe neophyte athletes, or they've forgotten if they're self-coached, this is not the competitive time of year. This is what you might term as the off-season or the recovery. You haven't started your build-up yet. So staying active is important, but as Menachem has said, have fun with it. And recognize that if you miss a workout because somebody's having a Christmas party or a New Year's party, as long as you don't go overboard at the New Year's party, that's not going to affect your event in May or June.
Correct. And as long as you don't go too long.
a workout, not a week or a month, because movement is part of what makes your life complete. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk more about maybe the person who's been listening to FitLabPGH, or somebody told them about it, or they just know that, I'm not as active as I should be. I am not sure exactly what to do, and I know that I need to do some sort of aerobic training or maybe some strength training. And I think classes are what's for me. What should they look for in a class? Think somebody maybe who hasn't exercised before. And we've talked before, you could really be inundated by information on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat of things that look cool, things that look sexy, things that look fun, but may not be well suited for people. So if you've got, maybe you're working with somebody and they say, my husband or my wife, they don't exercise, but they see what I've done and they really want to work with you and want some suggestions from classes. What are some things that you would say, these are some classes to maybe look for, or types of traits of the class?
The big thing is something that interests them. And sometimes it's just a matter, are you interested? No. Okay, let's just try one. There's a number of different classes you can do. It really depends on, do they have any pre-existing conditions? And let's assume that no. They sit most of the time, they're average, let's say, weight, but they want to get moving and feel better about themselves. In Pittsburgh, there's a number of different options that you have. We have a ton of yoga and Pilates studios that are beginning to pop up, but we really want to make sure that when we're going and starting, we want to make sure that the instructors are paying attention and are known for making adjustments throughout. So we don't want somebody that's going to go in and really push you every single time you go in, especially as a new trainee. One of the biggest mistakes that a new trainee may make, and this is really important for you to understand, everybody, both athletes and new trainees alike, you are your best advocate. Meaning if you feel that it's too hard for you for where you are right now, you can smile when the instructor says, go faster, go harder, go deeper. You smile at them and say, I'm working really hard right now. I'm just starting. Give me a little bit and I will push myself as I feel appropriate. At no point in time should an instructor ever turn your knob on the bike for you or force you down into a pose even harder. So you are your own advocate, and don't feel as though because you're the attendee that you can't speak up and say something, especially in yoga classes. If a teacher ever puts a hand on you and starts pushing you, it's uncomfortable. I'd say that's not the place to yell, ow, but you kind of want to say that's enough and be very firm and know that you are your own advocate. That being said, let's look at cycling fusion is great. They have a number of things that are going on. They do a little bit of Pilates, a little bit of yoga, a spinning bike that has a plan. They're following a plan that's going to take you over the course of 12 weeks, building you up in your fitness. And I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. Regardless of where you're going, ask them, is there a month or bi-monthly plan to help me see my fitness increase? And Mark Fisher Fitness in New York City does a fantastic job of this. They have 3 different subcategories for their classes. And over 8 to 12 weeks of coming to that class once or twice a week or 3 times a week, the goal is to have you be able to execute certain movements and be able to increase your weaknesses and balance out your strengths. So asking, what's the overall plan? It can be the cycling fusion, it can be TRX, it can be group kick. It's really finding something that stimulates you and interests you and is exciting. Even Move Fitness with John is fantastic. You're doing stuff, gymnastics and all types of different movements that you wouldn't otherwise do. It's fun, challenging, and you have great instructors there to really help you.
I'm probably setting you up with this question, but I'm interested to hear your feedback on this. Somebody who's recognizing that they need to move, they've gotten clearance from a physician to move, and they're not really sure what to do. What are your thoughts of hiring a personal trainer for a series of sessions before moving into the classes so that they have a good idea of how they move and maybe what their limitations are? Because if they're a new exerciser or a new mover, they may not know enough to say in that yoga class, hey, that hurts, I shouldn't do that. They may think, oh, it's supposed to hurt because they don't have an experience in exercise.
Absolutely fantastic point. Let's look at 2 things. One, know your personality. Sometimes a one-on-one personal training isn't the best, but a semi-private with either a friend or a relative or even a stranger may actually be better for you. So don't think that personal training is only one-on-one. The really good personal trainers will take a semi-private or a 2 people or 3 people to 1, learning the basics. It's a fantastic idea to learn how your body is meant to move and learn what tightnesses or imbalances that you may have. I would say the important thing to do is do your research beforehand. Make sure that the facility you're going to isn't just hiring a trainer who has a weekend certification offline, as we spoke about before the call. Ben, it's really tough nowadays to know what's good, what's not. So ask around. I would say personally, if it were my child or my grandparents going and looking for a trainer, I would tell them, look for someone who's ACSM certified, American College of Sports Medicine, NSCA certified, and it depends on the trainer, I think sometimes the ISSA, although most of them tend to be very good.
And I know we'll have a podcast coming out soon for our sister podcast, Moving to Live, with Mark Nutting. And Mark Nutting also suggested he's a career personal trainer, that if you're looking for a personal trainer, ACSM, NSCA certified, or also in some instances a National Association of Sports Medicine, or NASM. And all of these, if you Google them, very often you can either email those places and they will give you a list of trainers in your area who have those certifications. Or in some instances, if somebody has those certifications and you look up their bio on that individual gym's or their personal training website, they will list those certifications because they're proud of those certifications. I think it's also important to remember, I think Menachem had some great information there. Realize that those certifications, or somebody who has a certification, does not necessarily mean they're good. So do your due diligence, ask for recommendations. I know anybody who's in the field is more than happy to give recommendations. And sometimes you can find out that, this person is really good if you have a fitness goal, but if you just want to move better, they may not be the best person.
And something that's interesting, I believe it was with the interview with Frank Velasquez. He mentioned he has a number of people on staff. I think that was one of the ones you did with FitLab Pittsburgh. They mentioned how they try and find personalities that match with the people coming looking for personal training. And that's another consideration. Just because let's say there's two different options, or three is a real option, and you start with one and you realize, I really like the guy. He really knows what he's talking about, but we don't mesh. Personal trainers are, in my opinion, more important to appoint than physicians because you see them more frequently. And it's important that you're able to relate to that person and feel comfortable with them. So don't just look for the certification. See if they'll do a one-time session with you, maybe two, because sometimes, you're a little bit cold, the trainer's a little bit cold, trying to warm up. But find somebody that you really enjoy being around, who knows what they're talking about, and engages you on a level that you understand and you enjoy.
That's great information. I know I really enjoyed the interview we'd had with Frank, and actually that's where I'm going for my physical therapy for my back injury, simply because I was impressed by the facility. And as Menachem said, I met the people there and I was impressed and felt that I had a connection. So I think that's something that's really underrated. Just because somebody has a very good reputation, is highly recommended, they may not be specifically good for you as an individual.
Yeah, and that's... Go ahead. Sorry.
Another area I wanted to touch on with you being in the personal training career is your thoughts on somebody who's looking to give gifts to family members who maybe don't exercise, and they think, I'm going to give them a personal training course, or I'm going to buy them a series of privates because it's a great gift. I know a lot of gyms and facilities give out gift certificates, and I wanted to know what your thoughts were on that for people who are maybe looking for gift ideas.
That's a tough question. There's a number of things to consider when giving personal training as a present. One of the most important things is figuring out if the person is open to it. That's a gift that can literally keep on giving. Teach a man how to fish and he'll eat forever. But you need to make sure the person is receptive to it. And you need to know the individual. Some people will accept it and be very happy for it. So make sure you have that conversation with them, maybe now, maybe at Thanksgiving. It's a perfect time. They're not really suspecting that you're getting ready for Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa to surprise them. But it's a good time to say, bring it up. I'm working with a personal trainer. Oh, what do you think about personal trainers? Don't say, would you do personal training? What do you think about personal trainers as a whole? And if they tell you, oh, no, they're just there to take you, maybe they're not the right person and they'd be better off with a group class. But as a whole, if you know the individual has been looking to make a change and they just need to have that linchpin that will allow them to really move forward with much less of an obstacle to get over, it's a fantastic way. I would recommend maybe looking at a facility that has a number of personal trainers And that way the individual can come in and meet with the manager, like the JCC in Squirrel Hill. They can talk with the manager, and Lori or Marsha will set them up with the right person, personal trainer that matches with their personality. And that's really important, because not only do you want them to get healthy, but you want them to enjoy it. And when people enjoy it, and that's where we're talking about, the hiking, the running, the cross-country skiing, and everything that we have around Pittsburgh, it's something that you enjoy. So make sure that you're giving a gift that the person will enjoy. And after the gift runs out, they're going to look to try and continue that either on their own or with the trainer even more.
And along the same lines, if you have a family member or a friend that you're looking for a gift, and I know we all have too much stuff, and if you're like me, you kind of dread the holiday season because people give you stuff that maybe you don't want. So if you have a family member who is engaged in exercise, find out what they like to do, or if they have a gym or facility that they go to, see if you can give them a gift certificate to there to use, or maybe even anonymously where they go to renew their fitness package and somebody says, oh, you still have another 10 sessions left, is often a nice way to show that you're supporting them in their exercise, even if maybe you don't like to do what they do.
Yes, that's a fantastic idea, Ben.
So we've been talking with Menachem Brodie. Menachem is the owner of Human Vortex Training. He is a Pittsburgh boy, even though right now he is in Tel Aviv. As he told me, you can't take the boy out of Pittsburgh. We were hoping with this podcast to give you some ideas for what you can do as you move inside as the season gets a little bit colder, a little bit darker. Menachem exceeded my expectations by also mentioning some outdoor activities. If you are a hiker, or even if you're not a hiker, there are some great hikes and walks in Pittsburgh that can give you the variety. And I think what's vastly underestimated in Pittsburgh is you can buy the appropriate clothing and pretty much exercise outdoors in a safe atmosphere, in a safe environment, because you're wearing the appropriate clothing. I know it took me about 6 years after moving here from Florida to come up with the right accoutrements of attire. And now the days when it's maybe 15 degrees, 10 degrees, 5 degrees, and I really don't want to go outside, that's the level when my dogs want to go outside. So they force me outside, and then I realize I enjoy it. Menachem, any final tips that you might want to give somebody who's thinking about starting an exercise routine or is looking for new ideas for exercise in the Pittsburgh area and is just exhausted and wants somebody to say, here are some things you can try to do?
Yes, we're going to think outside the box. The first thing will be something that you mentioned before we jumped on here, and that's Gear Fest, the Three Rivers Outdoors, the used gear selling. I don't know how often they do that, but that's fantastic for people who are looking to lower the threshold. Oh, I don't want to have to buy a kayak brand new, but all of the kayak rentals are closed for the winter. So that's a fantastic opportunity. The second is think outside the box. As a performance athlete, now is the time of year where we'll have people, then you mentioned acupuncture or other things that may help aid in your recovery. Now's the time to test that. Don't wait until June or July. The third thing, and this is something that I did back in 2011 and 2012 before I moved, I actually signed up to take salsa lessons. There is a dance studio that teaches right next to the Animal Rescue League, another fantastic Pittsburgh establishment. And they have salsa and jazz and ballroom dance lessons. And I will tell you, Ben, I've played basketball. I've played a number of sports. It is really, really hard. And all of the things in my brain that got turned on to learn how to properly shoot or dribble or pass, were turned on, and it was so frustrating at first, but by the second class, it was so much fun. I didn't even realize I went through a workout. I wore my heart rate monitor. I burned 384 calories at a 45-minute class. Fantastic way to stay in shape and fun, and take your partner with you. And I think that's really the last thing to stress for today. If we're talking about winter movement, especially if you're an endurance athlete or you're someone who enjoys the solidarity of being outside in the summer, spring, and fall, look for things to include your partners or your friends with. The dancing was fantastic. My ex-girlfriend at the time, we had a ball, literally, as well as being able to connect when we went hiking. So yes, I was faster than she was, and I went out with some friends, and they actually were faster than me because they hiked instead of biked. But this is the time of year to get out and try new stuff and explore. Stop thinking specific adaptation to impose demand, performance. We know that kids up until the age of 16 that are playing 2 or 3 sports, and Ben, you mentioned this, I think, with Guillermo You wound up playing 4 sports in high school.
And Menachem is referring to a podcast we did with Guillermo, which is on our Moving to Live website. We'll make sure we have a link to that podcast. I'm sorry for breaking in. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. So you mentioned that you wound up playing 4 sports. This is the time of year to be a multi-sport athlete. Yes, we need to keep the main thing, especially if you're looking to learn to get into movement and get healthier. You may find yourself hiking every weekend and loving it, and you go to the Three Rivers Gear Fest and you find the new gear that you can go out and you learn about mountaineering and topography and how to navigate, and you learn all these skills. And then the summer comes and you say, you know what? Someone mentioned this Rachel Carson challenge. That sounds really cool. This is how you start to get into a healthy lifestyle. And that's what we'll end with, is start with fun and end with fun. That's why the rule I have for my athletes that I work with, number 1 is this should be fun, and number 2 is we need to communicate. But number 1, a healthy lifestyle, whether you're competitive or not, it should be things that you enjoy, challenging, and exploring new abilities that you have, or maybe you haven't tried since you were a kid, like balancing as you walk across a log.
We've been talking with Menachem Brodie. He is the owner of Human Vortex Training. He's given some great information about either getting started in exercise, or if you're an experienced exerciser, things to think about in what is probably your off season. He mentioned acupuncture as something to try if you have some aches and pains. You could try Rolfing. This is the time of year to try massage. We did an interview earlier this year with Leslie Bonsi, who does nutritional consultations. And I think we'll leave you with, if you're looking for more information on how to move, if you're looking for the nuts and bolts of it, I'd recommend a good starting point is Menachem's own website, Human Vortex Training. You might decide you want to hire him, or I'm sure if you send him an email asking for suggestions, if you don't want to do the internet coaching, he's willing to help you. And as far as movement ideas, check out the FitLab Pittsburgh podcast. We've got a good list of people. I want to thank Menachem. He's the owner of Human Vortex Training. If you're thinking about doing that spring marathon, trying a triathlon in the summer, now's the time to start lining up your coach and lining up how you plan to train. Menachem, I want to thank you for joining FitLab Pittsburgh for a second time, and I suspect you'll be appearing on our podcast in the future if you're willing.
I would love the opportunity, Ben. Thank you so much. And guys, tune into FitLab Pittsburgh. There's tons of great interviews here and on Move to Live. So much great stuff. And the great part is you can do it short and sweet while you're driving, while you're cooking, whatever it is, while you're walking. Great information and really learning and embracing the healthy lifestyle. Ben, thank you for all you do.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLabPGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at fitlabpgh and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLabPGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.